Okay, this is lesson 9.3 over rotations, how to find the rotation image of figures. So to perform a rotation, this means to turn a figure, and that figure is going to be turned counterclockwise, so the opposite of how a clock moves. So it'll look like this. Okay, so example 1 is to match the diagram with the angle of rotation. So we have 60 degrees, 130 degrees, and 95 degrees. Okay, so let's look at this first one. So this first one opens up more than a 90-degree angle. So we're going to go ahead, and if I look at the other two angles, those ones are smaller. So I'm going to choose the largest angle for that. So I believe this one is 130 degrees. And then if we look here, out of these two, picture 3 is smaller. So that one, I'm going to use 60 degrees for this angle. And then that leaves the 95 degrees for picture 2. Okay, so when we rotate figures on a grid, we have 3 rotations that we're going to learn about. The first one is if we rotate a figure 90 degrees. So that means on a coordinate grid that figure will move over one box on your grid. So here we have our 3 original points of pre-image. So we have 1, 1, 2, 4, and 3, 2. So to find the 3 new coordinates, so to find A prime, B prime, and C prime, here is the rule that we use for a 90-degree rotation. So it looks like negative y and x. So what happens is we take those two numbers from x, y, and we flip-flop their spots, and then also change the sign of the y value. So if we look at A, 1 and 1 is going to flip spots, and then the y value will become negative. Okay, for B, we're going to flip the spots of 4 and 2, and the y value will become negative. And then for C, we're going to flip the spots of 3, 2, and then the y value will become negative. So then that is the coordinates of the second figure. So you can see it matches up here. A is negative 1, 1, B is negative 4, 2, and C is at negative 2, 3. Okay, to perform a rotation that is 180 degrees, so that means it's going to move 2 positions around the graph. The rule looks like this. So this time we have x, y, but both numbers will become the opposite sign. So the numbers are going to stay in the same spot, but we're going to add a negative sign to the front of both. So A prime will have 1, 1, will become negative 1, negative 1. B will become a negative 2, negative 4. And C, we add a negative to both of those, negative 3, negative 2. So if we compare that to the graph, negative 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 4, and negative 3, negative 2. So that is how you do a 180-degree rotation. And then the last type of rotation is a 270-degree rotation, which starts here, and it goes around 3 spots on the grid. So the rule for a 270-degree rotation looks like this. So we flip the spots of y and x, but the x will become negative. Okay, so we're going to have A prime, B prime, and C prime. Okay, so we're going to flip-flop the spots of the numbers. So we have 1, 1. So that would become 1 and 1. And then we add a negative to the x spot. Okay, B, we're going to flip 4 and 2. and put a negative in front of the 2. And then we flip 2 and 3, and we put a negative in front of the 3. Okay? So that is how you find the new coordinates for a 270-degree rotation. So let's look at example 3. So we're going to rotate these 3 points. So I'm going to go ahead and graph those on the graph. So we have 1, -2, 4, -1, and 3, -4. So there is my original triangle. And so my triangle is going to be rotating 90 degrees. So it's going to be rotating up 1 spot. So my rule for a 90-degree rotation is -yx. So that means I'm going to flip the spots of my numbers and then change the sign on the y. So a prime will become -2, 1, and the sign is opposite, so I make that a plus. B prime will become -1, 4, and so then the sign becomes opposite, plus, and then C prime will become -4, 3, and I make the sign the opposite there, so a plus. Okay, and then I'm going to graph those 3 points. So 2, 1 is my A prime, B is at 1, 4, and C prime is at 4, 3. So then there is my new figure rotated 90 degrees. Okay, and then we also have this rotation. So this one is rotating 270 degrees. So my rule is positive y and negative x. So I'm going to start by plotting the original points. So we have -1, -2 for A, 2, +1 for B, 3, -1 for C, and 1, -3 for D. Okay. So then this figure kind of mostly starts down in this 4th quadrant. So it's going to be rotated from this quadrant all the way to this quadrant. Okay, so we're going to apply our rule. So A prime, we flip the spots of the numbers, -2, -1, and change the sign on the x. And then B prime, flip the numbers 1, 2, and change the sign on the x. C prime is at -1, 3, change the sign on the x. And D prime is at -3, 1, change the sign on the x. Okay, and then we're going to plot those points. Okay, and it is okay if the figures overlap each other. Sometimes that happens. It just depends on how your shape ends up. And that is how you rotate figures.